Good day to you, my fellow exoskeletons, and welcome back to the channel. We're here back in the Okim Ship Shop 1 for part 4 of the Ship Shop tour. So, let's dive into these bigger ships. Now, on each side of every large ship shop, you will find there these two large open bays with this huge entrance area that you can either fly up to or just fly through as an endo. And in this section, you'll find very large bays that stretch the entire way that can hold either multiple medium ships like shown here, or even up to one very, very large ship that stretches the entire bay. Now, funnily enough, in this one, every single ship is normally pointing forwards, that's this way, but this one is backwards for some reason. So this is actually the back of the ship, but let's jump down to the description and get this thing going. This one is the Manatee, which is an agile ore hauler made by Okim that can be navigated in dense asteroid fields. The ship is a large transporter that can carry up to 120 crates, and it achieves a maximum speed of 75 meters per second. The Manatee is also equipped with an eco mode and two large propellant tanks, and we're looking at about 18 mil for this one. So, this is the back of the ship, and of course, right away we have a lot of maneuvering thrusters to help with the turning of the ship. There's only a few on the top, however, but we do have this awesome T-shape for the radiators and some lights across the top, and again, repeated on the bottom with these little bits that hang down, which also have some lights on them, just for a little bit of decoration. We've got these cool green decorative areas as well, which is quite nice to see. Just adds a little bit of detail to the flat shape. Moving along the ship now, you will see each of these is made out of a modular section. This is pretty cool design, allows for a lot of freedom when designing different variants of the ship, because you can just make a longer or shorter one depending on your needs. But at the cost of extra materials, because this beam here could be shared with this one, and then you wouldn't have to plate in between, and you could probably fit a few more crates in, but still a cool looking design either way. Coming up to the front here, we can see we have the thrust arranged around the front, so it's kind of more like a pull than a push for these thrusters, but either way the stress works fine. So you feel free to put whichever version you like to put on your ships, have it all pushed from the back or pulled along from the front. Along the side here, you've kind of got these little kind of shield motifs here with some more decorative plating and some lights, as well as more thrusters here to help with turning and a braking thruster put on the side here. On the bottom, we have the single receiver as well as the resource points, and some little decorative poles, which are of course unique to Okim ships. And some more on the top here, as well as some more thrusters. Now on this ship you have multiple points where there are open hard points and open turntables for use in upgrading the ship later on should you wish to do so. You could put on mining lasers, and you could put on guns or collectors. In this case, this will probably be a mining laser on the middle on the turntable with two fixed collectors either side to give you a large collection area. Now on the front we can see there are only two of these box thrusters and some maneuvering thrusters as reverse thrust. For something this size, this is bare bones minimal in terms of stopping power, and I wouldn't mind seeing this maybe bulked out a little bit more for an extra couple of box thrusters. Now on the front here we've got these openable panels, but you can't open these manually because they are powered. Wrong button there. If we open this up, you can see this is where the large fuel tank is hiding, and it has its own little display here to tell you how much is in it. So if we close that back up, and that's the same on the other side, we can head on inside here. Now you've got the generator straight away here with some extra controls on this side. Let me find the light switch in here. Hopefully we can find that. And lights, there we go. Now we can see what the hell we're doing. So here we can see that you've got each of the fuel rods that is listed separately, as well as the generator rate and generator power. And there is also cooling and auto power buttons. So if I bring this up, it will try and bring the generator rate up, but the auto power thinks no, it doesn't need that amount of power and shuts it back down again. This is to make sure you don't waste fuel while working. Now it's got this cool little corridor that separates off the main cockpit area, And inside here we can find more lights as well as the transponder and the FCU. And all the YOLO racks here for running all the different scripts that this ship uses. You've got one spare open slot here. You can put another chip in should you want to add to it, but other than that, no real space for expansion on the code. Of course, Okim ships always come with a ship manual, which he's bolted on here. As before, you can just open these up and read through all the different things on this ship. Very useful, very cool, and I wish more ships would do it. Jumping back into the cockpit here, the field of view is really, really well done here. You've got a little bit of blockage from some of the controls, but for the most part, your field of view is pretty good. Up here, some of these are a bit awkward to read, but you've got your fuel rods again, as well as more auto power and cooling buttons, replicating the buttons from back there. And then on this side, we've got our ISAN and a close all button for the doors, navigation lights, and the normal lights for inside. And on, we'll turn those back off again. And on the main thing here, you've got the turtle mode, cruise mode, shutdown and power buttons, as well as your standard stuff for radiation rates and battery power and stuff here, and your main thrust power here. Very simple layout, although the issue with the lights is rather bothersome because it can make some of these harder to read exactly what it says, especially these ones here. So either some blockage needs to be placed for this light to stop it reaching the controls, something about here, or this light needs to be moved and positioned somewhere different, maybe across here, but it doesn't look like it'll fit. Either way, these lights are causing issues with viewing these controls. Thankfully there is a button in the cockpit. So if we just jump back out, here you can see the other door here. So all these handles are for when the power's down and you run out of power and you're stuck in your ship, you can still open that door, as well as open these should you need to when you're unpowered. At least that will let you get out, get refueled, and get back on your way. But yeah, other than that, pretty cool ship. I like to see these pull style ships. They are they make a very different design in terms of ship layout, and it's nice to see. But certainly at 75 meters per second, this is not going to be fast when fully loaded. It'll be much lower than 75. So maybe a few extra thrusters could be beneficial here. Maybe some at the back, maybe using this modular design, they could switch this one out to a thruster section that they can add on the back. And you could fill this up with, say, triangle thrusters, and you have it both pushing and pulling at the same time. Get much more speed out of that. Moving on to this wacky tri-shaped hauler. This is looking really cool, and we'll have a look at this one now. This one is the Tricone. The Tricone is a heavy freighter designed primarily for station-to-station freight. The ship is equipped with 112 modular cargo crates, and it has a decent maximum speed and a long flight time. It is equipped with the ISAN mono navigation system and a spacious interior with all components easily accessible. And this one's a little bit more than the other one at 21 million. So, looking at the start, we've got, again, minimal braking thrusters for the amount of crates that it's got. I'd like to see a little bit more there. But it looks cool for each individual section here. It's just mirrored around. It's very pleasing to the eye, I think. We've got quite a few resource bridges on the front. Probably too many for a ship this size, but again, in keeping with its mirrored look, maybe these could be centered on this beam here, and then you'd only need 3 on the front here. But either way, that looks pretty cool. Way too many thrusters here, I think, for maneuvering thrusters. When you've got this many, I think once you get to about 3 or 4, it's more efficient and more beneficial to just use a triangle thruster instead. And that could be easily balanced the same way the whole way around. So definitely a option for an upgrade there that will save you on fuel and power. On the side here, we've got more accessible resource bridges, and I'm guessing the same on this side, and let's check the bottom as well. So you can mine pretty much anywhere around this ship because there's so many resource bridges available. On the back here, we get more resource bridges, again just 3 there, and lots of thrust. Now I'm liking the layout of this thrust, it looks very cool. Possibly, depending on how much this good speed is, it might need a few more, but you could certainly stick those on the edge here, or on the inside edge here as well, pointing backwards. There's loads of space for upgrades should this need it. On the top here we can see the receiver, so it's probably running ISAN mono there. and we can enter the ship from the back through this handy little space here. No door to shut this off, probably because, oh, cool little stairs. At the front there, it's also open. I'll show you that in a minute. We've got lots of small fuel tanks here, and there's some gap in between the first two, but some batteries. I would say, if possible, it might have been better to swap some of these out for larger tanks, because that's more efficient in terms of storage and mass, but maybe they needed small ones to keep it walkable and easily accessible. Two main generators here feed the power requirements for the ship. You've got cooling on here, plus the radiators on the back, and then four quite expensive enhancers here on the generator. Now, you might want to leave these off by default and just leave them open, so if the user wants to, they can upgrade this later, because these add quite a few million to the ship. And then you've got, to refuel those, a good couple of fuel racks here, so you've got plenty of spare fuel to keep you going on your mining journey. At the front of the ship here, we've got several spare seats for passengers and mining crew, a couple of steps here up to the main cockpit, and then a very spacious layout here, very simple. You've just got a couple of levers here strapped to the floor and a couple of displays for ISAN and the essentials for your ship. Now, the view on this ship is somewhat restricted, certainly nothing to the sides and below. You have got these small areas here between the main sections of the ship that you can kind of see through, but for the most part your frontwards is a very limited cone. So having not flown the ship, I'm not sure how much that will affect it. Also, there seems to be, turn the light on there, you can see it's a bit easier. There's this tricone of glass. I'm not sure if that actually serves any particular purpose. It's certainly not going to protect the driver very much. And you can also fly in through these bits here, as I flew out from. So yeah, definitely an interesting design. Certainly some improvements that can be made, but a lot of that would be editable by the user as well, which is really cool. Something that concerns me is there's not really equal thrust on the back for turning as there is on the front. There's a little bit here to match these ones, but nothing that matches this amount of thrust here. So I do wonder how well this thing can strafe if you're running towards or near an asteroid that you want to avoid and you want to, you know, strafe out the way. Is it going to be able to move, or is it just going to turn weirdly because all the thrust is at the front and not at the back at the same time? But that will involve a test flight and not something I have time to do within this video. So jumping on to the next one now, we have the Merchantman. The Merchantman, made by Okim, is created for those who take saying time is money very seriously. 28 box thrusters accelerate the ship to 121 meters per second while empty, and keeping the speed at about 100 when all of the 60 cargo containers are loaded with the heaviest ores. The ISAN Mono navigation system and the Omnicia signal tracker system both ensure that you reach your destination without getting lost in the very foggy space of the belt. The ship is covered entirely in Aegisian plating, which provides the best anti-corrosion protection and helps reduce the weight of the Merchantman. 8 hard points placed on the front, top and bottom of the ship can be used to install additional tools and even weapon turrets should the owner wish to convert the vessel into an armed freighter. And we're looking at about 18 million for this one. So taking a look here, we've got tons of lights on the front around a very, very spacious cockpit. Nicely laid out thrusters with the resource bridges there, as well as the poles that are coming out here that look like signal booms. Very good decorative placing placed over the glass here, as just a little bit of extra design and interest to the plating, otherwise it would be pretty flat. We've got a door on the left here, probably the same on the other side, and some more thrusters tucked behind the main cockpit area here, and you can see that there's 3 of those hard points ready to go on the top. And we'll check on the underside here. We've got exactly the same mirrored under here. And of course we've also got these kind of landing pontoons which can be used to set down the ship, although I wouldn't recommend landing on this particular ship just because there's just very, very little downward thrust and you'll probably crash within gravity. Now at the back here we've got these thruster pods. We've got one forward facing box thruster for braking here, and we've got 4 facing back on the pod, as well as the neatly tucked in radiator back here. No hidden doors or anything here, and then you've got the main body of thrusters. Very decent sized main body of thrusters, as well as more resource ports on the back so you can mine and refill from here, and more radiators too. Everything's very nicely tucked in. I'm liking the shroud around this as well. Gives it a very cool look from the side and the bottom, that you know that part of your engines are covered. Same as the pod on the left hand side and the right here. More lights and decoration, looking very nice. Now, one thing I'd say about the protection on the ship, we don't know yet if these thinner floor plates, these are much thinner here, you can see them in line with a normal plate here, although less mass and much thinner, we don't know if that will burn through with corrosion a lot quicker. So keep an eye out for that once corrosion mechanics are in the game from corrosive clouds. So let's jump in the ship and have a closer look. Okay, first thing we see here on the way in is tank buttons for your propellant, as well as some YOLO on this side. And I think that's not the same on this side. This side's got the flight computer and transponder and stuff for running the generators. The generators themselves are tucked in at the back of the cockpit area here. This one sinks into the floor, and this one is covered by plates here, and you've got your receiver on the inside so you can be running on ISAN mono. At the front here we've got one small propellant tank. There are no doubt more. This ship will probably not run on just one small propellant tank, but allows you to put an emergency tank in should you need to do so, and there's a button on there too that just says emergency. Oh, there you go, already planned for. So this one is turned off by default, so if you run out of fuel, you've got a small tank just to try and get you closer or to some place that you can easily refuel, hopefully back enough to a station. So good to see that's implemented. We've got a ceiling mounted seat, which I also like to see, very nice. And we'll jump in here. Look at that field of view, very nice. You can see below you quite a bit and above you, so very nice indeed. We can turn the lights on and off here. Thankfully none of these lights are affecting the controls as the other ship was. So up here we've got a whole bunch of receiver information. So these are for receiving the standard station receiving messages, and then you've got your distance. So this will be off of, I would imagine, kilometers to the station, or this is going to be rangefinder distance. But I didn't see any rangefinders. This is probably distance to the nearest stations. On the bottom here we've got our ISAN coordinates and your standard fuel and propellant labels. We've got shutdown and auto power, and you've also got cruise and turtle modes, as well as all the levers that you need for your flight controls should you wish to edit them. So that is all groovy. Leaving here now, I'm not seeing any spare fuel rods, so that's the only real concern for me, is that it's going to be on a very limited use case that you could fly this ship, because before long, especially if you upgraded it with either weapons or laser turrets for your mining, it's going to take quite a while for you to keep flying back and forth between stations every time you need to refuel. So ideally you want to be taking some with you. Now there's plenty of areas like here and here that you could slot in some spare ones, either loose or within a holder. But yeah, definitely an improvement I'd like to see here is spare fuel rods. You could even ceiling mount these. These could be mounted next to the generator themselves. You at least have one in there, one on the other side. Maybe another one here. Doesn't block anything, so yeah, definitely something that could help. I'm guessing no, all these generators are on, so it doesn't run two then run the other two, so who knows. I have to see on how long this would last in terms of its actual use case. So taking it out, mining and mining and mining until these generators run out of fuel. Hopefully that would give it quite a long time, but without testing that, I don't know personally. So we'll just shut up that door there. In terms of looks, I think it's a really neat, compact, good looking design. I like the angles, the decoration. But yeah, definitely this is my favourite one out of the 3 so far that I would put my money into. But we've got one more to look at, and that's this one. Now this design looks a little bit similar to the people carrier that we saw in the other video. If you haven't seen that, there should be a link in the description to all the other videos for this ship shop. Now this ship is a very, very long version of that, and let's see what it's got. This is a Malamute 2, and another one by Okim. It's a freighter that can be upgraded to a miner ship. Malamute 2 has 86 cargo containers inside its pressurized anti-corrosion hull, and multiple hardpoints spread out on the front of the ship, onto which various mining tools can be installed. The ship's maximum speed is 95 meters per second and 75 meters per second when fully loaded. The Manatee 2 comes equipped with ISM mono and operates with several power management scripts that increase its efficiency. 2 medium-sized fuel tanks provide enough propellant for travelling multiple hours, and the advanced generator can supply up to 8,000 EPS when needed. So 8,000 should be enough to handle at least 1 laser and 1 collector. Let's see, now we've got 20.9 million. So let's have a little look-see here. Very long ship indeed. I'm noticing very similar pattern here to all the other thrusters. They are only having 1 box thruster each side for braking thruster. When you've got this many crates, you need to have just a bit more thrust for braking. Otherwise you're going to be traveling for quite some distance trying to stop. Now, on the outside of this, I'm really liking the dotted line here with the plates, as well as the triangular supports down here, and this whole kind of wrap section that they don't push along the entire ship. They've just got it around some area, just helps separate off different areas, even though it's the exact same shape all the way along. Just adds a bit more interest. So really nice job there on the decoration. On the back here, similar to this ship, it's got a hell of a lot of box thrusters at the back here, and quite a few different lights around its decorative plating. That's very nice to see. Now if we find our way to the inside here, there we go. And in here we've got the main flight computer and transponders, and some spare seats. Going down into here we have a separate fuel area and power generation room, which is cool. Very nice to see. In fact, this is really nicely done. You've got this really cool kind of ladder. Not that you can use it as a ladder, but it looks nice. Very open fuel tanks here. And then you've got this wraparound support for the generator here, which hides the extra generators thrown in here. You've got all the controls and systems that you need for the different tanks, flow ins, flow outs, and all the generator levels, as well as YOLO script that probably is dedicated to just these generators. Further up here there was more YOLO here as well as here, and then you've got the manual on the side here. You've got lights inside here. I'm going to turn these off for going into the cockpit so I can see properly. And let's see what we've got. Now obviously with a top mounted cockpit, just like I mentioned in the other video, this does leave you at a danger of hitting stuff in front of you, as you can't see too far below you. You can end up clipping something that comes in low on your ship. But other than that, a pretty good field of view. On the right here we've got all our fuel and power requirements with the batteries and stuff, and all the buttons associated with that. On the left hand side we've got control for flow in and flow out of the tanks and your propellant, and some extra controls there, and the main controls in front here. Pretty standard stuff. You've got your turtle and cruise mode, door buttons, nav lights, and several unused buttons that you can redo should you wish to add buttons for any particular thing for when you add on stuff on the front. And you've got your standard controls here and ISAN. So if we jump out and go have a look at the front, because quite a lot of the description was mentioning about this frontal area, and I think this is a pretty cool area. This is very wide, very open, You've got resource bridges on the front here as well as more thrusters, and this big spot in the middle here now. My guess is that this is intended to be used with a large cradle. You can stick a mining laser and a seat and a collector on the sides, and then you can aim that manually and mine from here. So you'd be sitting in a seat here with a laser and collector either side of you, and you would mine away at the asteroid in front of you. And then you've got extra spots up here, so you can stick weapons here or mount even more collectors and lasers and stuff. There was definitely room in the generator room for upgrades, so you could up the power a little bit more on this ship, but I wouldn't want to put more than 2 mining lasers on this, depending on how many batteries it's got. I didn't see any batteries in there, so they must be tucked away behind this armor plating along with the cargo crates. So, what do you guys think? We've got 4 very different haulers, very different capabilities, but they have very similar pricing. They do pretty much mostly the same thing. I would probably pick this one for sure out of these 4. For mining, it has got less crates, but I certainly think that if there was another design like this with a few more thrusters and stretched, that could make a pretty good hauler indeed. But for starting out pretty early in the game, this is a very nice one to go for, so make sure you head over to the Okim ship shop should you want to come check this one out. And I will see you in the next episode, which will be the final part of this ship shop, and it will be another big ships area just like this one. So until then, Kenetor out.